So knowing that about odd and even functions, we recognize first that a is an odd function, its sine. C is going to be an even function, its cosine. And this is odd, and this is even. So we have a negative in here, and as a result of it being odd, we're going to pull it out of there and put it in front. So we can rewrite this as this function. Now, if you're wondering how do we go ahead and graph from this point, we would note that this is negative, so it's inverted. It has an amplitude of 2. But the big hurdle now is going to be figuring out what to do with this b value. So we know that period is 2 pi over b. And you have to just get comfortable with your fractions. If you learn anything in this class, I'm hoping it's fractions and being comfortable with them. So that's 2 pi divided by 2/3. And don't get cheap on me, because people take shortcuts and they make mistakes and then they pay for it later on. So you get this. We could, if you want to cancel out diagonally, you can. I'd say don't try to cheat yourself about things. Just do this the formal right way. So if I multiply across, I get 6 pi. If I multiply across on the bottom, I get 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So at the end of the day, we would be making a graph. And the big takeaway is that this starts at 0. It ends at 3 pi, wherever that is. Somewhere in the middle, wherever that is going to be that point. This is inverted, so it's going to be following this kind of a shape, which means I have a minimum here and a maximum here. And it's going to be 2, right? So this is going to be positive 2. It's going to be negative 2. And we go ahead and just connect them. Folks, we just graphed with the most minimal of math. If you are interested, you can check out the textbook for this course. You'll see a good page of math that's done. They plug in radian values for the function, and they pump out some other values. They have a t-chart table with 5 points. It's pretty robust and pretty good algebra review and trigonometry review. So if this is not making sense, feel free to check that out. Otherwise, please enjoy the freedom of graphing without having to do much math. All the math we had to do was this, right? And simplify, and that's it. Now, we're using our brains, though, because we recognize it's an odd function. And so this came out to the front, and that affected our graph. B is interesting. Of course, we said it's an odd function. This negative comes to the front, but there's a negative there already. So they cancel out. Let me give you a big takeaway. When I give you an equation and you have to graph, use this equation. When I give you a graph and I want the equation, use this. We're graphing, so let's go ahead and use this. 2 pi over 4, noise. That's going to be pi over 2. That's going to be our period. So if I graph this once again, you could just eyeball it. I don't need you to be technical right now. We'll be technical later. There's time for that later. I just want you comfortable right now. This is pi over 2. This is sine. So I have a middle point somewhere. It's not inverted anymore. It looked inverted, but because I applied the rules for odd functions, I pulled out the negative, became a positive 8. So this is a regular sign with a max at here and a min right here. We go ahead and connect those. This, of course, being a positive 8. This down here being a negative 8. And there's our graph. Once again, extremely minimal math with the correct graph. Now, finding the values on the x-axis for these, we'll show you how to do that later. We save the best for last, cosines, right? You can just ignore the negatives on these things, so it doesn't even matter that it's there. And when I say ignore, I'm talking about whatever is inside. Let's show you the period on this one. That's going to be 2 pi over 3/4. And then once again, just multiply across. 8 pi over 3. Gosh, that's ugly. It's okay. So we're going to go ahead and start at 0. Put a point at, oops, swerve. We don't put a point at 0. This is cosine. We put it up here. And not down here because it's not inverted. And then we're going to have another point up here somewhere. And that's because this has a period of 8 pi over 3. Then it has a bottom point down here and the middle one between those two and those two. We connect them. There's a cosine graph. This has a 3 amplitude. And that's it. Again, notice the very minimal math. All we have to do is figure out what this is. So this point, of course, on our x-axis is going to be 8 pi over 3. This point right here is going to be at 0, right? You're smart enough. You could figure out what this point is if you wanted to, right? You're dividing, right? It's halfway, right? You could do some damage with this. You could figure things out. For this last one, we're going to ignore this negative in here because cosine is an even function. We're graphing an inverted cosine. I'm not going to go into the details on this one because I'm pretty confident that you can do it. So make sure you take the time to check to make sure that you get the same answer as I did. For your summary, explain the significance of knowing that a function is odd or even.